What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the podcast show, whatever we're calling this. We haven't come up with a name quite yet. We're working on it.
Very hard, yeah.
We have some possibilities. We haven't nailed one down yet, but another Marvel episode. We're going to be going into phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Last episode, obviously, we did phase 1, so we talked about the first 5 movies in the phase.
6.
This time, 6 movies. You're right. So we're going to moving on to the next 6. Or this time it's 5.
No, phase 1 and 2 are
6.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah,
if I can count right.
I don't know. Math is hard. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the next 6 movies, starting off with Iron Man 3.
So, actually, pause really quick.
Yes.
So, where I was going to interject. So, to give just like an ultra brief recap of phase 1,
Yes.
I thought it would be kind of cool to even maybe do this at the beginning, and then we'll see how it changes as we like talk about the phase 2.
Let's do it.
But phase 1, I think favorite movie for you was Captain America or Iron Man,
Yes.
right?
Accurate.
For me, it was either Avengers or Iron Man, so we were kind of in agreement with the Iron Man being probably top, if not the best.
Yeah. I know we definitely agreed on the top 3 being like the best 3.
Yeah. The worst movie, is probably Thor. Yeah.
I think that's probably going to stay that way.
Yeah. I was even thinking about it to myself today as I was like, let's like do a quick recap of if your whole third act just blows, like it just kind of kills it. So anyway, okay. And then best villain of phase 1, I think without a doubt is Loki.
Yeah. I think I would probably agree with that. I'm trying to like quickly think about who else might even be in contention. I know we didn't give him like super high marks, but probably something has to be said about Red Skull. Decent, pretty decent villain.
Yeah. Abomination
is not so much. Jebediah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Abomination, like that fight scene was cool, but it wasn't until the very end and kind of Anyway, we don't want to get sidetracked too much. We just want to do a brief recap. And so the last thing that will be for each of us, and I think I kind of already know the answer, but it doesn't have to be necessarily the best superhero. It can be either the best or your favorite superhero from phase 1.
Yeah. So I would probably still say Captain America.
Yeah, and that's what you said. And I think I would probably have to say I really do love Hulk. Like I've loved him as ever since I was a little kid. Really love his power set. But I would say, and leading up into our discussion about Civil War, would probably be Iron Man. The fact that individual and like his character, as far as like Robert Downey Jr. and that carried 3 movies of 6.
Yeah.
So
and I think that like that was definitely his time to shine. Like Iron Man in the phase 1, and then up until like later phases, he kind of comes back into form a little bit. But phase 1 was definitely the sweet spot for Iron Man.
Like the godfather of the MCU.
Yes, I would agree with that. Okay.
So quickly wanted to do that, and then to kind of flip it around of. We don't necessarily have to do all 4, but I thought at least maybe do 2 of the 4. What, and maybe this will change as we talk about it, is your favorite movie of phase 2, and what do you think is the worst of phase 2?
I think let's leave that to.
You want to leave that to the end?
Yeah,
okay.
let's leave that as we go through it, because I want some of these to kind of be like first impressions in a way.
And then do you want to do characters as far as?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
So I'll just give you a brief. Here's what we'll do. I'll give you a brief. Like here's kind of what I liked about phase 2, and then we'll kind of move into the movies. Like speaking about characters, I think looking through these 6 movies, it still really shines for Captain America for me. He still shines in these, and I'm towards the end we get maybe a peek at my favorite character that could be in contention, being Ant-Man. I think that he definitely shines in this phase as well.
I mean, who doesn't love Paul Rudd?
He's great. Love Paul Rudd. He's great in any role he's in, essentially, right? But yeah, we'll talk about that later. I don't want to give away too much at this time, but what about you? What's your coming out of phase 2, what were your initial takeaways?
So phase 2 for me, it does have some like really good ones. For some reason, I like looking back, like looking at this list, I'm like, there are some gems in here. There really are. I mean, one of the best movies is in here, which we've kind of talked about before. and definitely like one, at least at the time, that I just wasn't expecting was Guardians of the Galaxy, and we'll talk more about that as we get into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some quality stuff, but for whatever reason, I kind of down look on Phase 2. But there's really some really good movies in Phase 2.
Yeah, I think it's just that it's I think it's better than Phase 1, but maybe the drawback slightly is that it's I'm forgetting the word, but it's the version before Phase 3, which just Phase 3 is just so good.
Yeah, it's just so monumental and like really, there was just still a lot of building in Phase 2.
Yeah.
And I think what I especially like is that this is where they started to kind of branch out and do some different things with Guardians and Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And then I think that allowed them to really branch out in Phase 3 and then like explode in Phase 4. So anyway, so just a little preview. Didn't want to give too much away, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of maybe preview the episode that way.
Yeah, we're stepping around it too much. So let's actually just get into it now.
Let's dive into it.
And one more quick disclaimer before we get too far, just because I'm already having this be a problem. I broke my glasses earlier this week, and I am basically going into this blind trying to read my laptop.
Literally.
So I'm going to try to do my best. No promises if I give some misinformation or read the wrong movie, but we're going to go through it anyways. We're just going to keep moving. So first movie on top of the list, right back to Iron Man. His fourth appearance out of 7 movies.
Yeah.
And this one, I don't know. I think I feel similarly about this one as I did about Iron Man 2. Good movie, but like not one of my favorites. And so if we break that down a little bit more, let's talk about Iron Man, and then let's talk about the villain.
Okay, so Iron Man is going up against Oh yeah, that's right. That's
Mandarin.
Right. Pseudo-Mandarin.
Pseudo-Mandarin.
Yeah.
As we learn later.
So I think this is kind of where the phase where I started building up expectations, right? Of like, you had these like really, really cool things of like what is or isn't going to happen. I was so bummed that they just didn't have Ben Kingsley be like this super badass terrorist.
Yeah.
Like I did not like that about Iron Man 3. And Aldrich Killian was like an okay, like I felt like maybe it was a little bit too much putting in like the fire people and him being like the real Mandarin, but then also he's not the real Mandarin because we're farther along.
Right.
Ben Kingsley did such a great job of being so menacing that for him to be a joke kind of pissed me off. Yep. I
think that's my biggest takeaway, and the thing that when I first watched this movie, I was very, very bought into Ben Kingsley as a Mandarin, and I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be sick. Like this is gonna be a really fun movie. And then when you realize that he's a fraud, it's like, oh man, there's so much momentum of that. And the thing is like, deception can be fun. Like if you're like, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head within the universe, but like, believing somebody else is the villain and then finding out there's even more powerful villain is really fun sometimes. But I think this is the opposite, where you're like, Aldrich Killian was kind of just lame, and like once they like that final fight scene, or maybe it wasn't a final fight scene, but like they take care of him pretty quickly.
Yeah, the boat. Like, they're on the boat when he that was really, really cool when Tony does whatever the execute plan is, where all the Iron Man suits came. Yeah, that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Just finally felt like for the 3 movies that we got really quickly of Iron Man, it finally just felt like there'd be this reckoning that Tony's fearing. And it's funny that you mentioned like building towards like deception of a future villain like Thanos, like even Loki, and the Chitauri, you thought that they were the big bads, but then they allude, Thanos is coming at the end of Avengers, I believe is when they first teased that. So I don't know. I love that this is like during Christmas. There's like charming things about this movie, but I don't know. What else do we need to talk about as far as Iron Man 3?
We could dive into some of the other talking points like rewatchability and stuff like that. But as far as the actual movie goes, before we move on to that, the only other thing that I can think to mention right now is that when we watched Endgame recently, and the one appearance of the person standing in the back that like we have no clue who the heck that guy is, I finally realized who that was, and it's the kid from this movie.
Yep.
So,
as a teenager.
Yep. But yeah, I don't have very much to say about this movie other than that. Like I said, so if we want to just jump right into rewatchability from there, one that I don't really go to that often. I think it has its redeeming qualities, like the fire scene and stuff like that. I think that's really fun, but overall, I think it's just an average movie, and I don't know if it. And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if it really does much to like progress the whole narrative of the universe all that much.
Not really, and that's actually the point that I was just thinking on. Is like it's kind of just rehashing old stuff with Iron Man and Tony Stark. Like it just is playing a lot on like his anxiety and like his PTSD.
It dives really deep into that,
and so like that's cool. And again, I just think that would have been better with a more menacing villain.
Yeah,
it just kind of came up short with that of him going through this crisis of putting a suit of armor around the world while internally imploding.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I will say one more thing. Speaking about trying to put a wall of armor around the world, I did like the scene where I can't remember, was it early in the movie where the Mandarin comes and just like blows up the Malibu house? Like that was pretty fun. Like that's something that I don't think I really expected on first watch. I was like, oh shit, this is getting serious.
Yeah. I don't know. And again, it just set these super high expectations that just kind of fell flat.
I would agree. So yeah, decent movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fun. I personally love like holiday themed TV shows and movies and stuff. So I really enjoy like the Christmas, undertones of this movie. But like you're saying, rewatchability isn't super high with this one.
No. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I don't really. It's aged okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's aged. Aged fairly well, and
the powers were great.
Powers were good.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, overall decent movie. Okay, so let's move into our next movie, that being Thor: Dark World. Okay, so Thor: Dark World, a movie that I actually rewatched last night because I couldn't remember too much of it, and I was finishing up some homework. And so this one for me, I came away thinking, like my initial impressions of it when I first watched it was like, okay, decent movie. Not one of my favorites. I think there's still a lot that could have been done with Thor's character and really wasn't explored in this movie. And then rewatching it again last night, I think there was a lot of cool elements of the movie, but as a whole, it was kind of dumb.
Yeah, so it's definitely better than the first one.
No, it wasn't a very high bar to do that, to be honest.
Yeah. I actually think, is it Patty Jenkins who ended up doing Wonder Woman and stuff? I think had a part in this. Maybe she directed it. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not super well versed on all that stuff, or not great at remembering it all the time. Anyway, no, there are definitely things that got fleshed out. Visually, this one takes a huge step up too. The interaction between Thor and Loki, I think, is great. I think an issue that I have, and kind of brought this up last time, is like really trying to balance like the funny and serious. I thought this movie actually did a decent job of that. However, mixed in with the funny versus serious balances, strength of villain, and just like if it's too silly, like it just kind of falls under that like lukewarm. Like I definitely think, unless you're a fanboy, or
it's really hard to do silly and serious in the same movie.
Unless like you're really invested into the MCU, I feel like that there are a lot of lukewarm movies. Like I'm just gonna get excited about every single Marvel movie. Like I just am, and really probably gonna enjoy it. But like if you really like are critical about them, there's a lot that just are okay.
There's a lot of these movies that are very much like, here's the formula and let's get to the end, and look, all that happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into this a little bit more. The Dark Elves as a villain, how did that go?
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, just like not in my top at all. Yeah, Thor looked way cooler in this one, and again, the interactions between him and Loki, like I just already have said, probably the positives.
Yeah.
Like it's not as bad as a movie. I think people like to hate on this movie a lot.
So yeah, I was gonna say when we were maybe talking about it in the last episode, and I was kind of just trying to recall it from memory, I think I was definitely downplaying this movie quite a bit, and I actually got some of the elements of this movie confused with the third movie too. For some reason, I was thinking that his sister comes up in this movie, but it's not until the third movie, which probably goes to show how good of a movie this is if I didn't really fully remember it. But I'll say that that I was going somewhere with that, and I completely lost my train of thought. But let's touch on this though. So the Dark Elves as a villain, I think, is what makes this fall flat so much, because I think it's just another one where it's like the first movie we both agreed the villain wasn't great. It was like kind of low key, wasn't like the whole setting of that was weird, and like I think the idea of like a old world power and like their struggle between the Asgardians and the Dark Elves and like all that kind of sounds cool, but like the Dark Elves themselves are just like, they pop out of nowhere, they come and just try to kill some people, they kill his mom, they like go back away to their home planet, and like it's all kind of just like, it doesn't feel like there's a greater purpose of them. Like it very much feels like a one-time villain, and like pretty close they're gonna be gone.
Like that this villain is just for this story, and that's it. Yeah. Curse was cool. Like the death of Thor's mother, her name is Freya. Is that it?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
No, I don't know. Norse mythology is like really, really cool. I know God of War was like amazing. Like that was so fun to play through that. But I just feel like that there's so much more material there that they could have done and made it way cooler that they just didn't.
Yeah, and something I noticed, so I just started watching Game of Thrones for the first time. Comment about that what you will. And like I like the idea of trying to do the Norse mythology medieval kind of like having that be its own spin, like that's something kind of completely different from the rest of the MCU, right? But something I noticed in a lot of the earlier scenes especially was they were like very much trying to be like serious about it, like this, I'm thinking specifically about when I can't remember what world it is, but one of the opening scenes where the three, what are they called? His friends, the
Warriors 3.
The Warriors 3. They're fighting those people. They're like those ogre-looking things.
The rocks or whatever.
The rocks, and like all that was all like, it had a very much an element of like this is a medieval kind of like struggle between these two worlds or whatever, and like some of the dialogue was very serious, and I was just like, I don't get what this is. Like this isn't really fitting in with the rest of the theme.
Yeah, well, and obviously then you see that with Thor 3 that they much more go the other way of just being completely silly pretty much the entire time.
They go to space for pretty much the whole time.
Yeah. Which I don't know, that like just like the character of Thor, I do appreciate that more serious side, but they didn't capture that well in the first one, and then this one they did okay with it.
It's funny to think about that Thor in this movie is still very much Thor, the Norse mythology, the god of thunder. Like he still speaks very much like somebody from the 1300s, whatever. And then by the time Ragnarok comes around, he's just like a normal dude. Like he's just cracking jokes and talking like somebody from it's like
which is funny because everyone like gives Thor 3 such high praise, but anyway, that's next phase. We'll get into
like not to say there's anything wrong with like, I think you just have to pick one. Like you can't have such a big leap in somebody's character between two movies.
Yeah, I think that probably the issue that they were having with Thor is just that of identity, right? Of like, what type of character are we going to have? Are we going to have this like super powerful god, which they kind of have at some points? Or are we going to have this like goofy side character? Or, like, and I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I think Chris Hemsworth does a great job as Thor. But there are times where I wish that they would just pull out that full-on thunder, which it's weird that they say God of Thunder when it's lightning. That always bothers me. But, I mean, whatever.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. So, anyway.
So, rewatchability, I would say, as somebody who literally just rewatched this last night, medium to low. Not terribly excited about rewatching it.
No. Yeah, it's not one that whenever we say, like, rewatchability, I always try and think of, would I be willing to watch this out of order? And this one, probably not.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I think that's all I have to say about this one. Mid-tier movie.
Yeah. Thor's powers are cool. That's the only other thing I have to say. He's cool. Yeah. Cool dude.
cool. I like Thor.
Cool.
All right. Let's talk about the third movie and one of our favorite movies. I don't think this is a spoiler because I think we touched on this in the last video.
Yeah.
Captain America, Winter Soldier. So, what do we want to say about Captain America, Winter Soldier that we probably haven't said already?
I think, is this the first movie of Joe and Anthony Russo? I want to say that it is.
You would know better than me.
You goggle it.
I'll goggle it.
No, I think one of the first things that you can say about this movie is how fantastic of an action movie this is. I don't know. I love Black Widow in this movie. I love the fact, for somebody who hated Captain America up until this movie, who just thought he was a great leader with a frisbee, the hand-to-hand combat and like just the display of how cool and like why Captain America is a badass and like deserves to be the lead of the Avengers and not Iron Man, who I'm much more a fan of. Like, he proves that in this movie. Like, as far as the storyline, it's so phenomenally good. You see a ton of growth from the characters. Like, you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. Like, this is
what doesn't this movie have?
Yeah, this is such a good movie.
Yeah. A quick Google says it is the first one that the Russo brothers directed.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, man, like, I think everything about this movie, I like the fact that I'm trying to remember if we actually get a glimpse of Bucky in any previous movies. I feel like we do.
In the first Captain America, the first Avenger, he falls off the train.
Of Bucky as the Winter Soldier. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No. This is the first that like he's brought up at all.
So that was probably, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that was probably like a pretty big shock to some people of like, shoot, like this guy's who it is. And I think the fact that like the way he is incorporated in the story is really awesome. Like there's still a lot of mystery around this character, and like I think he's one of those characters that has a lot of power that like it makes sense, you know what I mean? Like he has a lot of power, and I like the way that his interactions with Captain America, like they're kind of like, it's kind of like two heavyweight boxers who haven't fought somebody before that has like the same power punch as them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And then they both punch each other, and it's like, oh crap, like you can do that too, kind of thing. I think there's just a lot to love about this movie.
A ton of heart. Like I actually didn't even remember who Bucky was until like watching through this movie, but like just the turmoil, and like I think it showed the great character arc of Winter Soldier, and then that carried through the other movies of this like combat of like him not being able to control his actions versus, you know, attacking, you know, Captain America and all that. Like that the scene that keeps recurring in my mind is when Captain America throws his shield after he thinks that Nick Fury is dead, and he catches it. Like that moment was just, ooh, I don't know what's going on here, but I like it.
And that whole speaking of that reminds me, like the whole storyline around Nick Fury and like, is he dead, and that whole scene and like the downtown having the shootout with like the fake police people, like all that was really fun. Like I think that's like one of the biggest things to take away from this. Like all the action scenes in this were really well done and like dramatic, and like they had you on the edge of their seat, and like
the knife fight scene, like
fun to watch.
Dude, like and that's where I really liked, you probably haven't watched them, but the Netflix Marvel stuff that they did, like Daredevil, like the hand-to-hand combat and like the choreography, like it gave me such an appreciation for that, and like the skill that these actors like take time to just be phenomenal at their job and just make it look so cool. I could just gush about this. Winter Soldier is so cool throughout this entire movie, and then they end up alluding to Robert Redford's character, which I don't remember what his name is.
Alexander Pierce.
Yeah, that's him. And they allude to Crossbones in this as well.
Great villain, Alexander Pierce. Great villain. Sub villain, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, I guess technically the overall arching villain of it.
I honestly, like, I don't know if I have everything negative that I can think of off the top of my head that I would say about this. I think like it's just really holds up well.
Yeah.
Rewatchability is super high. This 100% is one of those movies that like, I don't care what mood or what order I'm in the MCU. Like I'm just gonna watch it. Like
yeah. Well, and two, this is kind of the starting to because this is where like they are gonna put the planes in the air, right? That are gonna like assassinate people who are potentially villains or whatever, which then builds up to future like Civil War and stuff of Cap being very, you got to let people have the agency to make that choice and stuff. So great, like seriously, there's so much to this movie that is just phenomenal.
Yeah, all I would say, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but like this is very high at the list of total Marvel movies, and we'll get to that eventually, but. Anything else on this before we move on?
Yeah, I'm trying to just think. Great character development. We already talked about like powers and stuff. Really great rewatchability, and also another one that this is one that I think did a lot better of a job of the funny versus serious. Like it has a lot of heart and like high stakes moments, but they're also like with introducing Anthony Mackie.
A lot of it brought on by Anthony Mackie, who does a really good job of like, and it's funny how introducing somebody into a series like this from basically the start, right? Like basically, we see the very first time they interact, and I think they do a really good job of writing that character into the story of like, it makes sense that this random guy would somehow become Captain America's sidekick based on like his past and the way they build it up.
Yeah,
they do a really good job of introducing him, and Anthony Mackie is just a fantastic actor.
Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan too really display like the chemistry and obviously why they ended up getting Falcon and the Winter Soldier and like kind of that tension of both, like you're saying, being like the side character, side hero. Cap's, who's Cap's best friend. I don't know. It's just fun. Anyway, we could continue to gush about this. See it.
Fantastic movie. Yeah. And a complete switch from domestic fights to something a little bit more
cosmic,
terrestrial.
For sure.
Cosmic. We're going to be moving on to next talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, the first edition. Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's talk about that movie, because this movie, I think we alluded to it a little bit in our first episode that we did. Excuse me. That when this came out, this was like a movie that we both like weren't super familiar with, maybe, or like it was definitely a surprise as far as like the previous movies that had been made in the MCU, and we both came away thinking like, holy crap, this was a really fun movie.
Definitely the first time I feel like Marvel just did something really weird, and obviously James Gunn is great in just like creating a super weird, wacky world, like to dive into. Up until this point, most Marvel movies, like, is like opening night, midnight release for those. They don't really do those anymore, but you had to like wait in line for your tickets, and it was awful. Anyway, no, this was something I didn't go see, and I don't know if we were dating then. My now wife, but I think at the time maybe we were just friends. I remember was like hyping it really up, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll just miss this one. And I'm so glad, obviously, like I went and saw it, and phenomenal. Chris Pratt is hilarious in this movie. Like it's funny because I was actually just looking at the list and saw Ronan the Accuser. As far as a villain, again, probably lukewarm. He's okay.
I think he had a lot of potential. He ended up being kind of a lukewarm villain, but like I like the idea. See, like his character to me is what like they could have made the Dark Elves. Like that type of character, I think is really cool. Yeah, it ended up not being great.
Yeah. Definitely the dysfunctional family vibe is what makes this movie work and is totally fun. Obviously, like Groot and Rocket are super cool, and then Drax, and like there's just like a ton of comedy layered in this.
Probably you'd probably say the first like pure comedy movie that they made in the universe,
which totally like made it really good. Like again, that balance of you also have to choose what you're gonna make, right? Of if you want to make a serious movie, then make a serious movie, and then you can layer in comedy. And if you want to make a comedy, then do so, and then you can have more deep moments of Star-Lord losing his mom. And,
I guess that's the way you bring on a comedy movie. You just start with somebody's mom dying.
Yeah. and how they, compartmentalize and process the trauma.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, another just really fantastic movie, and another one that I guess we can touch on some of the more detailed elements of this movie. The the characters introduced in this movie were so great. Like almost every single character that was introduced in it is not just like the Guardians of the Galaxy, but like all of the characters that are with I'm forgetting the dude with the blue head, the blue mohawk.
Man, as soon as you said,
I know it just
he whistles, right?
Yeah.
No boy, I'm not.
All of the Ravagers is essentially like all those guys. Really funny. Yondu. Obviously, the one of the Russo brothers, the other one that didn't direct the movie, his brother that's in it. That's like Yondu's assistant.
You mean
sidekick.
James Gunn?
I mean, yeah, James Gunn. I'm sorry.
But I was like, both the Russo brothers direct.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, James Gunn's brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sean Gunn. Maybe.
We'll just go with that. We'll just say Sean Gunn.
It's been a long day. Yeah, like again, similarly to talking about Winter Soldier. Like I don't know if there's anything necessarily that I would say is a strong criticism about this movie. It's just a really, really good movie. Yeah,
it just kind of as far as the Marvel movies go, maybe a little bit more like summertime popcorn. You know what I mean? Like. It was just super funny. The cosmic elements are really cool. Everyone's powers, again, like Zoe Saldana is phenomenal as Gamora. Nebula is really menacing. Probably more so for me than Ronan even. Bigger elements of Thanos, obviously, and this is like the most screen time we get of him up until this point. Great character development. I really like the story arc of Star-Lord and kind of all the characters like realizing kind of like the importance of like needing other people, because each one of them has their own special trauma, but like they realize, I don't know, hopefully what every person gets to realize is that you need to be your own person regardless of like what your background is, and like there are other people who can help you do that.
I think that like that's one of the really, really big themes of this movie that I don't know if you really got in any of the previous Marvel movies. That like there's just like a warmth to this movie that there isn't to other movies.
No, maybe the first one that's like tackling, not to say the others don't tackle like harder issues, but does it really well, I guess maybe you could say. So I don't know what we need else to add to this movie, but it is good. This is one that my wife in particular will just like pull out and just watch the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's well worth the watch of just as far as like a standalone comedy.
I'd say rewatchability very high. I don't think there's much else we need to say.
I think we covered this one really well. Pretty concise too.
Nice.
As I hit the microphone.
Okay, moving on to the penultimate movie in this phase and our second edition of the Avengers Age of Ultron.
Can I just say right off the bat that initially this bothered me so much that there was an Avengers movie not at the end of the phase.
Interesting.
There was one movie after it, and for whatever, I mean, just how my brain works, I was like, I don't like that. I wish that they would have moved it one more, but I mean, it works. Like, obviously, Ant-Man makes more sense after this, but Age of Ultron, I thought Ultron as a villain was so cool, and this was one where I wish that his character wasn't finished off at the end. I was just so bummed because like this like sentient almost being, like obviously this is where like Jarvis is basically turned into Vision, right? And so Vision's obviously an awesome character. I loved his development through the movies, but Ultron had this like that really cool like theological end of world like unstoppableness about him, and it was just so good. There's an alternative universe where like you could see Ultron being the Thanos of this of the MCU, you know what I mean? Like it would make a lot of sense to me that like he would be the most powerful being. And like to say, like you're saying, it's kind of sad that he kind of just goes away, because
I feel like there's so many different ways that you could like reintroduce Ultron. Like the idea, like having Ultron as like almost just this, like, he's essentially a program, right? And so it's like you could find a way to introduce Ultron later on throughout this movie. I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
And remind me, the voice who does it's Robert California.
Yeah, I think it's James Spader.
James Spader.
Yeah,
I wanted to say David Spader.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, that's definitely mixing two people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like just that, like his voice was great, and just that doom and gloom, and like I am thinking back, like there's obviously a lot of characters introduced, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who unfortunately, bites the bullet.
Nice.
Vision, the fight between Iron Man and Hulk is in this one. They build on the anxiety of Tony Stark in this. Thor goes off and does his own weird thing in that pool. There's probably meaning behind that. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to think of what else. The lifting of the hammer, that scene is really cool. Dropping the city and stuff. Like this is a good movie. Like, as far as Avengers, I do like this more than the first one, just because I watched the first one so many times. So many times. It's like, well, it's funny enough. This is a random tangent. I will just take a second. When Deadpool came out, and it came out on DVD, dude, I pretty much watched that on repeat, and I can still watch that movie, and it's still really enjoyable to me. I love Deadpool 1 and 2. Avengers was just kind of my social circles. It was oh, let's watch Avengers. We all can agree that it's good, and it was always like that. But man, I was so burnt out. So Age of Ultron, breath of fresh air, tons of comedy, tons of just really cool action and fight scenes and what you want from an Avengers movie. So
yeah, this one by far was superior to the first one to me. I think just every element you just talked about, I was just sitting back and letting you go because you were pretty much touching on anything that I would have said. It holds up really well as a good movie. It progresses the storyline as the full MCU, moving all that forward. And I think the only criticisms that I would have is just there were so many cool characters introduced in this that I wish some of them would have stuck around. I wish we still would have had Quicksilver. I wish we'd still get Ultron in some of the movies. And
you haven't watched the X-Men movies, right? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because there is a Quicksilver in the Fox universe, or what was the Fox universe, and he was phenomenal. And they reference him, in WandaVision, that's the same character. It would be cool, especially with all the variants and stuff, if they introduce him actually as a character. And like you were saying, some of these other people could come back in different forms, and especially we'll find out on May 6th with Multiverse of Madness. I mean, a lot can happen after that one, so
it's all up to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange can bring us all back.
Yeah, I don't think it's coincidence that Moon Knight finishes 2 days before that gets released, but we'll see.
Just really punch you in the face with all this
information. Lots of content. So, aside from that, I think we touched on again, just a great showing.
Yeah, I think what we're learning through going through this, because we do prep on these, but we don't discuss it beforehand really.
No. This is all free-handed. There's no script.
No.
If that surprises any of you.
Right. This doesn't seem very polished. You mentioned it earlier in the podcast that the phase 2 just falls short to you, but I think there's a lot of really heavy hitters in this.
and that's what, like I said, that's kind of at the beginning I wanted to say okay, what's good, what's not, and then as you talk through it, you kind of start remembering, it's oh yeah, that is really good, because maybe it starts off a little flat with Iron Man 3 and Thor, but then definitely swoops way back up. Mm-hmm. So,
and then like we'll get into this probably more with Phase 3, but just the run of movies that they put out from whatever that'd be 2015 to like 2018 was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was just like top notch, like one right after another. Yeah,
and like every 2-3 months too.
Yeah, well, geez, and now like last year, it felt like every month there was something new coming out from Marvel.
Yeah,
that was really good.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I think we've covered everything with Age of Ultron.
Yeah, I don't really think of anything else.
Let's move on to the final movie in this phase, and that being Ant-Man. Okay, talking about the last movie in the phase, we were talking about Ant-Man, and you brought up something in discussing Avengers Age of Ultron that I thought was interesting about it following Avengers and that seeming more natural. Why is that?
So like for me, I think it's just like at the end of the phase, like you kind of want that to be your apex, you know what I mean? Or like your climax of like finishing with Avengers. But they still, I think, needed that 6th movie. Like I think it would have been weird as a phase to only finish with 5. Plus, they were still building quite a bit, and like knowing now, like the future that they needed to build with Ant-Man, it would have been way too much to like have Ant-Man before, because like they're already introducing like so much with Age of Ultron. I think it would have been too much to try and throw Ant-Man in there, and I like how he fits more. I think it's Civil War, which Civil War is kind of like a pseudo Avengers to me.
Right? Yeah, it is.
But anyway, it's funny. That was another one I was thinking about that I hate on, but is actually a really good movie. But anyway, so I really enjoy this movie. But yeah, I think just, I don't know. Is that a good answer? That it's just like...
Well, because my reason for bringing that question up, because I was like, I think it would be cool to just like bookend every phase with an Avengers. Like, I think that makes sense. And I was trying to think if there's anything that I missed in regards to like, I think I don't know why they couldn't put Ant-Man before. Like it's kind of erroneous at this point, but like I feel like there's no reason why they couldn't have.
I think at the time it would have just been expected that he should have made an appearance then in Age of Ultron, and I think it would have just been too much. Which is weird saying that, because then you look at like Endgame and where they went, like literally like hundreds of characters.
Yeah.
So
because they've done that with characters before, where they'll skip movies. I mean, we didn't get Loki for 4 or 5 movies after we got Loki in Dark World.
Well, I'm trying to think, because I think that's at the end of Ultron. Is it at the end of this movie where they have the end credit scene where Thanos is like, "I'm gonna do it myself"?
If we're talking about end credit scenes, I have no idea. I can barely remember what happened. I'm pretty sure,
because it was kind of like. Because, like, all of Phase 3 is building up towards Thanos getting the Infinity Gauntlet and collecting the stones.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, a lot of the post-credit scenes and stuff are throughout the movies, like, with the Ether, with Thor in the Dark World, or the
introducing the stones throughout the whole...
Yeah. So we don't need to go through each one. But, I don't know. I guess getting back to the original point, I don't know why they didn't have Ant-Man before, but I guess Kevin Feige and his... genius, overarching dynasty that he's creating.
I mean, it works out. I just thought that was interesting, because I think it would be cool to do that with Avengers. Have like Avengers are gonna end like each phase, but
yeah.
Anyways, so talking about Ant-Man specifically, after we get off that tangent, another really, really good movie. I think, and the cool thing about this phase is that we're really starting to like take a different approach on character development. Right. And like this is another one where it's like they spend the whole movie introducing Ant-Man as a character and really diving into who Ant-Man is, and it turns out to be a really good just standalone movie outside of the MCU, where it's like I think in the first phase they didn't do a good job of that at all.
Yeah, it was as we were talking through this phase, I've been thinking about like if you had a friend who didn't really want to start from the beginning, like really thought the Marvel movies were stupid, like what are the handful that you could show them? And I think this is probably one of them. If they're a big Paul Rudd fan, you know what I mean? I think it's
who isn't
a great opportunity just to kind of do something more simple. And I don't. It's not too heavy. I don't feel like you have to know a whole bunch going into this movie. It's got like a all-star cast with. I almost said Frederick Douglass, but that's not who it is.
I think you're gonna say Fred Durst. Fred Durst is not in this movie.
No, there's just a ton of great actors, and like you said, it kind of breaks the mold a little bit. And yeah, it's just like he's a fun character to watch. So.
You know what's funny to me? This has nothing to do with Ant-Man, so we'll get back to well, it does, but it doesn't have anything to do with this specific movie. But when I was watching Ant-Man recently, I was like, why do we never get an Ant-Man and Venom cameo? They're in the same city.
Yeah, they are. Maybe. Well,
that seems like a crossover that has to happen.
Well, I mean, I guess not full on spoiler warning. I mean, Venom was in a different universe and then came to Spider-Man's universe and then is out of the universe.
I guess you'd say timing wise with like licensing rights and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that was a nightmare, man. Yeah. It's like every studio is like has been at some point trying to create their own
that's
MCU.
True. That's true. Fair enough. But going back to touch on this movie, again,
Yellow Jacket is terrible.
Yellow Jacket is not. Okay, let's dive into that then.
Sorry, that's
fine.
I wanted to throw you off for a second.
That's fine. I think that Yellow Jacket, or the idea of Yellow Jacket, has potential, but the reasons for me that it falls so short is that like the actor that plays Yellow Jacket sucks. It's essentially just another like ripoff of Tony Stark and having another Iron Man. Like it's another suit.
Like his power set is like he just has spikes.
Yeah.
That like shoot beams.
Just have laser beams.
Like, yeah.
I think that it is a natural way to create a villain, and it makes sense. But it wasn't that great. Like it wasn't exciting.
No. And it's crazy because like. Some of the villains I didn't love in Ant-Man 2, but like Ghost was awesome.
Ghost, okay, we're not gonna. I was just gonna go Phase 3. Yellow Jacket, not great.
No,
but on the other side of that, all the characters that we do get are really really good. Like all of Ant-Man, his crew,
the Wasp.
Fred Durst, whatever his name is, Frederick Douglass.
Is it Frederick Douglass?
I don't know.
Sir Frederick Douglass?
I feel like it is Douglas something. But anyways, it's just a heavy theme of this podcast of just not knowing who people are, but knowing who they are, but not knowing their names. ADHD brain.
Truly. At its finest.
I think that this being another one that is very heavily a comedy movie, like that's basically what it is.
For sure.
But done really, really well.
Yeah. I think where they get you to in like the heartstrings is just Ant-Man's relationship with his daughter. So, not like a super heavy hitter to finish off of Phase, but definitely I think something that just left people curious.
Yeah. And see, maybe that's my argument for why they should have put it before. If I was actually going to make an argument, like it feels like you want to leave everything on kind of a cliffhanger.
For sure.
And like having it end with Age of Ultron would have kind of been like, oh crap, like is Ultron coming back? Like what happens from here? Yeah. Like what's going on? Like I think that could have just been a better way to tie it all off. Where Ant-Man kind of just feels like that fun summer movie you watch, and like It is
another popcorn movie. I wonder if Ant-Man probably came out about that time, because sometimes they'll like end the phases at weird times too, which it's weird that they did like 6 and 6 and then like 12 and now they're doing like 40 for phase 4. At least that's what it feels like. Yeah. So I don't know why they do what they do, but yeah. So anyway, I think that about covers it for the phase that we are in, which is number 2.
Number 2.
So, for you personally, Dalton, what is the best movie of Phase 2?
So, I think this is slightly unfair. I'll give that slight caveat because I think that Winter Soldier is by far the best movie in this one. For
sure.
And I think it's my favorite as well. So let's just put that aside, because I think we've gushed on that enough. Like, yeah, we know our feelings about that one. That one, hands down. So if I was to pick another one of these movies that I think did a really good job.
So then what's 2 and 3 for you?
So yeah, let's put together top 3. I think that there's 3 movies in here that have to go in, and you can maybe put them in any order, 1 through 3, but I think it's Guardians of the Galaxy, Age of Ultron, and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Now the question is, what is the order?
For me, for sure, Captain America has to be number 1.
Number 2.
For me, I think it's arguable, but I would say Ultron for me is 2. But like, I love the creativity of Guardians. So
yeah, I wouldn't necessarily fight you on either one, but I'm gonna fight you for the sake of the podcast. I think if you wanted to say standalone movie, Guardians of the Galaxy is probably better experience, a totally different flavor from what we've gotten previously.
Yeah. It depends if you're looking at it as like where it lines up in the story or whether you're trying to get into the MCU.
But I think that my argument for Age of Ultron being number 2 is it feels like a continuation of Winter Soldier, and like that style of directing and that kind of like.
I think the Russo brothers might have done.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
We can look it up. But. I think they all are very cohesive of like, if we were to put a style on this phase, like that's that.
Yeah, for sure. And then I wanted to add, as far as if we did this with the last phase, so we might as well. I think 4 is Ant-Man, obviously. So then we were going to get to this question anyway of what's the worst? What's the worst? So since this kind of already has wrapped it up, is Iron Man or Thor worse in this phase?
It's so funny to say it because Thor is one of my favorite characters in the MCU, but Thor: The Dark World I think is still the worst movie in this phase.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it can be relative, because it still can be like a good movie just like in comparison, or you know what I mean, for some of these, like when we get into phase 3, like there are going to be some that are definitely farther down on the list that are still really good movies, but when you're going up against Infinity War, like you're just not going to beat that out, at least for me. So I don't know. It's kind of funny looking back at it, because I think initially I would say Thor: The Dark World, but there are like some things I don't like about Iron Man 3 for sure.
For sure. I mean, it's like, not a fantastic movie.
Yeah, for argument's sake, I'll say Iron Man for this one, even though, I don't know. I was so disappointed. This is my revenge for being so disappointed that Ben Kingsley just wasn't like a super bamf in Iron Man 3. But
yeah, that's fair. And I think that if you wanted to go off of, my big reason for putting Thor as the worst movie is because, like, similarly to, let's say, Eternals, I watched that movie and I come away with almost nothing. Like it was almost not worth my time watching.
It doesn't build, like you're saying, on the big story much. Like, I think the big things that you take away is like the relationship with Thor and Loki, which is for sure what they build on in later movies. They definitely did a good job of like taking what was good about Thor and like building on it. And now it's crazy to think Chris Hemsworth almost dropped out. Like, he didn't want to be Thor anymore after the second kind of flopped, and I mean, fans hated it, right? So for them to revise it and completely go in a different direction is impressive. So I think we could continue to argue about this of whether it's Iron Man or Thor, but
when it comes down to it, both of them are the bottom, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Okay. So then I think it might be a better argument for best villains. Let's start with, who is your favorite superhero?
I think that the best superhero, if we're so I think this could be two different conversations. Who's the best character and who's the best superhero? I think the best superhero is still Captain America, but I wouldn't fight you if you wanted to say like maybe Chris Pratt, so like Star-Lord is the best character in this phase. But as far as like displaying powers and being a hero, it still has to be Captain America.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think if we do we want to do like a male and female? Is that
we can do that, whatever, man.
Then I would say opposite of that. I love Gamora. I think Zoe Saldana is like so like that was like the first. I don't know, like I don't want to say the first, but she was just a character who I was unfamiliar with, who was just super cool, and I just instantly became invested in her story.
And like if you look at this phase in as a whole, like it introduces a lot of badass women. Like you get
Van Dyne as Wasp. You get Black Widow. Obviously, isn't like just overly sexualized. She actually has like a backstory, and even like Jane Foster, who was going to take the mantle of Thor,
and Another Way being just like a badass woman.
Yeah. Nebula is super cool. Scarlet Witch, obviously, who becomes one of the most powerful, superheroes in the entire universe. All of them are really good. Especially after WandaVision too. Like, she's great.
It's funny that you say that because like after watching WandaVision, like I don't know if it was just the old,
I know exactly what you're going with this.
I don't know if it was just the old style of episodes, the first couple. Like it took me so long to watch WandaVision, and then after watching the final episode, I'm like, holy shit, the Scarlet Witch is like the most badass character in all of the MCU.
Seriously, especially like when she's like doing that spell in the back, and she's just like walking around is like. Yeah, like unlocked the beast as far as like, and yeah. Anyway, we'll get into the TV shows too. We'll have a podcast just with TV shows, or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just incorporate it.
We can just include it in Phase 4.
I mean, it is part of the overarching story.
If we look at Phase 4 as just a movie phase, we get like 3 movies.
You still haven't watched What If and Hawkeye, right?
No.
Okay, and you're putting off Hawkeye, aren't you?
I don't like Jeremy Renner. I don't like Jeremy Renner at all.
It's good. Haley Steinfeld or Steinfeld?
Steinfeld, but yeah.
I don't know. And welcome to how to mispronounce people's names constantly throughout an entire podcast.
I think what we've learned during this podcast is that if we're trying to come up with names for the podcast, it's either, I don't know, look it up. What's her name? Like we're just...
that person with the face. No, anyway, that's kind of a different tangent, but I don't know. So did we talk about favorite villain?
No, we
got distracted on favorite superhero. So yeah, we've covered just about everyone. Did you have a favorite? We named off a ton of female leads. Is there one that you are privy to?
I don't know, to be honest, because I think that like all of them none of them are full on leads, and all of them are so like badass in their own ways that like, I don't think I have a favorite.
Okay.
I feel like you could pick any one of them, to be honest with you.
Truly, and it's such a bummer because this is really where Black Widow should have been. Really, it should have been in Phase 1. Yeah. But I think even like just as a makeup, it should have been in Phase 2.
No, I think that the best way to do it. So we have Iron Man 3 starting the first phase or this phase. Put Black Widow as the first movie in this phase. And I think that takes her character development or like the appreciation for her character.
For sure.
Everything about Black Widow just skyrockets.
And also I want to add to that in my opinion, like I know it's not like her movie, but I think that Captain America, Winter Soldier, I think is just as much Black Widow's movie as like she made it just as fantastic as Chris Evans did. Like,
I would agree. I thought you were going to say something different. I was going to say, I think that I'm forgetting her actual character's name, but Black Widow's sister. I think that if we would have had her the Black Widow at the beginning of this phase, like the introduction of her in further movies throughout the phases would have been awesome too, because she's such a badass character too.
She for me, she stole Black Widow again, like projecting, but man, Florence Pugh.
Yeah, Florence Pugh is the actress, but like I don't.
Oh, it's Yelena Bolsloff or something like that.
Okay.
I don't speak Russian, and again,
I don't think
welcome to the podcast.
To remember her name,
of what name are we trying to pronounce?
Cool. Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about favorite superheroes. As far as mine over this, I would say I probably am with you. Captain America's phenomenal in this. Like,
I don't think you can argue about like powers and like being a hero.
I'm fine with that. I don't really want to dive too much deeper into that. I do want to have a quick discussion about favorite villain.
Okay. All right, let's get into that then.
Okay, so some notable ones that I put down. This isn't every character, but we have the two pseudo-mandarins from Iron Man 3. We have Malekith the Accursed with Curse as well. We have James Buchanan Barnes as the Winter Soldier, or Bucky, as you also could refer to him as. Alexander Pierce, Crossbones, are in Winter Soldier. Then we have Ronan the Accuser, Nebula, and the Collector is kind of, I guess, a side villain. I wouldn't say he's a villain.
He's not a villain.
But he's an important part of the story for sure.
Yeah.
And then Ultron, Baron Wolfgang von Strucker, I guess kind of anti-heroes, and Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and then Yellow Jacket, who is definitely the worst. Maybe not. I don't know if he beats out Disappointment in Pseudo-Mandarins.
I was gonna say, yeah, if you're talking about just like the collapse of a potentially great villain, yeah, Pseudo-Mandarin's definitely in there.
Yeah. Collapsing on himself like a dying star.
Yeah. I think that there's actually a lot of pretty good villains in this, but like for me, I just keep going back to again, Winter Soldier. I think he's by far the best. But if we're gonna take this in a different way, my love of like sci-fi, I just wanted Ronan the Accuser to be such a badass character, and he kind of was at the start, but then obviously like his character kind of fell short at the end. So I don't know if I can give him best villain, but like I want to put him up there as like I really loved what they started to build with Ronan the Accuser. I love that type of villain. But,
did you ever see the old Blade movies with Wesley Snipes?
I don't think I have, no.
There's a scene where like I don't even remember what's happening, but like blood gets taken out of Wesley Snipes, part of the story, and it like goes to this like intricate like pattern and stuff. That like exact scene is almost done in with Ronan the Accuser. Yeah. Or the right. And I remember watching it, and I was just like, "What the heck? They took this right from that movie." So whenever I think of him as a villain, I'm just like, "You just copied. Like you're a phony."
That's funny.
Smell like beef and cheese. No, I obviously I think Bucky and Alexander Pierce even did a great job. Yeah. If I would say personally, probably not a huge giveaway or secret, kind of talking about him before, I loved Ultron, even being like disappointed and wish like I wanted more of his character, and thought it was just like so like I don't know, just like his thought process of why he's like going to exterminate, you know, like it just was really cool. So for me, I would say he was also in contention. So
yeah, I would 100% agree. And I think that like the idea of that like AI like just exploding and becoming something that like I'm just thinking about now, I'm kind of like losing my train of thought because I'm thinking about Ex Machina and like thinking about like that movie if like that was to turn into a super villain, you know what I mean? Like I love that whole premise, and yeah, I think that they do a great job with Ultron of like taking that character and like really bringing it to life and showing how powerful it can be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to fight you on that. I think Ultron was great as well.
Dope.
Yeah. Is that it? Is that all we have?
I think so. I don't really have any other thoughts. Like you said, it's kind of funny. You kind of like have this perception of like, oh, Phase 2 is just like all right, but
it's bangers after bangers, really.
Yeah, it's honest. I would say its top 3 are better than Phase 1's top 3, And even like their bottom 3 are probably better than the bottom 3 of phase 1. So.
I think I probably said this at the beginning. I think phase 2 is better than phase 1. It's just really hard to compete with phase 3.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of alludes where we're headed. Phase 3 will be next because that's how numbers work. And thanks for tuning in. I guess, am I okay to close it out? We don't normally do this. We appreciate you guys watching. Obviously, interact with us. We're on Twitter if you want, I guess. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Phase 3. See you guys.
Peace out.